So I'm going to start diving in. I am going to do a few different things. I want to talk about the 4 different options that exist today for visual editing with a headless CMS, get a little sense of like what CMSs support which, and how they work differently, which one you'd use for what, and especially how to combine the different approaches, because that often is the ideal when possible. I want to talk about the technical implementations of each, the workflow implementations of each, and I'll show you some of this using a visual editor, or actually a couple visual editors. So anyway, let's go ahead and start diving in here. I'm going to move on I got little widgets up here to show me the chat and everything. But please, as you're coming in, continue sharing the chat. Tell me about yourself. And oops, we're not ready for questions now. So I've got this little Excalibur board, and I'm going to start going through, I think, a couple important things to cover on this topic. But like I said, ask questions throughout, and I'll make sure that based on your questions, we're covering the right things, because we can go many different directions with here. We can go really deep in the technicals, really into the design aspect, really into the organizational workflows, cost and ROI implications, all that stuff. So hammer on the questions, and I'll make sure to focus on the areas I'm seeing you all are interested most in. Now, oh, awesome. We've got people from Nagaro. Fantastic business, fantastic partners of ours. In India, it's late in India, so thank you for coming on so late. But anyway, let's start with why visual editing. And why don't I start with an example? So if we rewind really quickly, we might know that content management in the way past, maybe one of the most common original definitions of CMS were things like WordPress, or at least common in terms of widely used. WordPress allows us to just make a website, make pages, and you can customize it with PHP code, but you can also use a WYSIWYG interface to create long-form blog content, add your images, limited but powerful kind of drag and drop to rearrange and change things. And that was really cool until we kind of realized that mobile sites are a thing, mobile apps are a thing, progressive web apps are a thing, watches and TVs and all these other types of devices are a thing. And we needed to decouple that and not say, hey, our CMS and our website are the same thing. We need them to be separate things. So the CMS can deliver content over an API so that we can connect it to our native app and mobile site and, modern React, Next.js, quick, site, whatever it might be, serving multiple places, multiple types of audiences, but centralized and managed in one place, not coupled to any technology. As we all know, technology often goes through periods of decoupling and fragmentation and recoupling and consolidation. And I think right now we're in an interesting in-between phase where we know we have to support different types of websites, architectures, mobile apps, but we don't necessarily want to make our software systems and workflows too complicated using multiple tools for one job. And we also don't want it to be difficult to do what used to be easy. So let me show you a brief example of what a typical, I think this is what I want. Okay, here's what a typical headless CMS editing experience looks like. It looks a bit like a Google form. And so this is what at Builder we call a data model. This is where you say if your data has a very clear and rigid structure, what fields it should allow. So in this case, this is actually data that powers our partners page. So let's go, I think we have m/partners. There we go. Yeah, so this is a page that's dynamically pulling from this API to list out our different partners. It's an interactive page. It works on mobile and desktop. It actually exists both within the Builder website and inside the Builder application, which are 2 different code bases. So this is a good use case for structured data. It is just data where we can list out partners or integrations. We can ask various fields, what should the label be? What should the icon be? Upload a photo, whatever, description, etc. This works great for things like blog authors, partners. We've seen people, if you have like a fitness app, you might have your fitness instructors in a structured form like this. Really useful for filling out the fields and putting in many places. As you might imagine, though, this type of fill out the form, fill out the box is not necessarily ideal for building new pages. If you are part of a team where you have like a marketing site and your marketing team needs to try out new pages all the time, a new email campaign will go out, so they need a new page for it. The page might have a special look and feel and design specific to the use case or the audience or whatever. And trying to blindly fill in something like this is a little difficult. If this were to generate a page, and maybe Builder, we could make pages generated off of these partners and integrations like we show here. But I don't really know, for instance, in this description field, how long should this be? Can I write an essay in here? Should I leave it short? I don't really know how this is going to display, so I don't really know what I should put here. And that leads people to guess and then publish, and then hopefully what they generated does work well, but you don't necessarily know. The other challenge that can happen here is finding this. Let's say, for example, you've got a typical CMS interface, which could be structured into folders and views and models, and you have all these different types and all these different entries. And maybe your job one day is just to go find the Akadaka entry and edit it, but you just don't know where it is. Or a better example that you don't know the name. Let's take, for example, we have a features page in Builder, or we have like a About Us page. It can be hard to search and find that within the interfaces. Yes, of course, you can search. We can search About Us, but that's not always the name of the page, the entry. This kind of assumes that people organize their content well. And while there are ways to do it, there's nothing easier than just being able to find it on your live website. And there's maybe nothing more frustrating than you're on your live website and you're like, I just want to edit that. You have no idea how. It's in your CMS somewhere. You're having trouble finding it. And this applies on both sides, by the way. So this could be the content editor who just wants to make a change. Why can't you just make it as easy as an edit button being right in front of my face? But if you're a developer on the team, this can be frustrating too, because at the company I worked at last, we used a headless CMS. And frequently our other team members, marketing, product design, would be in, we used HipChat back then, but a lot of people use Slack or Microsoft Teams now. And they would chat us, hey, where do I find this? How do I find this? What's the name of this model? What field is this? And it was really annoying. And then when it came time to making edits, it got a little bit more tedious, and I'll cover that in a minute. So the first approach that I want to cover when it comes to visual editing that starts solving some of these problems is visual edit buttons. So let's start with that last problem I just mentioned and how we can just solve that. Is we have content on our site. We want people to find it, and they don't know how to find it. So for this, I want to show the product that Vercel just announced. It's cool because it requires no update to your code at all, or very minimal. Sometimes you have to pass like one special option to it. And it works with any CMS that adds support, which right now, from what I know, Builder.io and Sanity support, and I'm certain they will have more coming now. They did a big announcement and there'll be even more coming. Let me do one thing. I need to actually remind myself what the link to that thing is. So forgive me, I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick because I have to look up what the preview site we have is again. And then I can share exactly what it looks like. Okay, cool. Screen share coming back once I find my button. Excellent. So here's an example page that we made that uses this integration. This was our little test bed. And what's cool is this is in Vercel's collaboration mode. So this is already a mode you might have seen before if you use Vercel, where you can add comments. You can say, hey, this, actually a good comment I really want to add is, hey, this is missing a header, right? So it's nice that it's right inside their system where you can have preview branches and then you can make comments. But what's cool is they added this edit button. When you click this edit button, you may have noticed that now all these fields I can see and I can open in the editor. This is really nice because I'll show you what the code looks like in a minute. And that's it. We can just pop open. So I think we were looking at a different partner now. Let's open Assemble. And this will bring us right to the CMS and right to the field that we had. Excellent. So this is solving one key thing, which is just how do I edit this? The beautiful part about this is also that it links right to your CMS. So it doesn't require any change to roles and permissions. If I did not have permissions to that, then the CMS would say, oops, you can't edit this, or any other role permission workflow would be in place. It could tell me the workflow stage. Again, it's just a link to the CMS, so it shows you exactly kind of what you would expect. Let's see. So this is definitely really, really handy. And let me show you some code really quickly. So in this example, I'm just going to show you a pretty trivial CMS example. If you're familiar with the Headless CMS, nothing should look new here. I'm using Next.js the classic way. I know they have a new app router, but you get the idea. Integrating this to any CMS literally is just you have your content that you fetch from your CMS's SDKs or APIs in Builder. That's just called builder.get. And whatever you're getting, obviously you can add a query, whatever you want to do, filters, etc. And then you're grabbing the content and you're just printing, the title, the subtitle, whatever fields that you have. And the beautiful part here is all we need to do differently to activate this Vercel live preview is the Builder SDK or any other SDK will probably have an option like Vercel preview. And this is where you can pass in, I think it's in n.Vercel preview. We have a doc on this, so I forget what the exact environment variable is, but when Vercel is running in this preview mode, it will add this additional environment variable, and now it'll just work automatically. And you can add some abstract code to make this completely automatic, but there you go. We did not have to make any changes in here, and now you have edit buttons. So I'd recommend that's a no-brainer. You should just do that right now today if you haven't already. Nothing will make your life easier than making it easier for your teams to find the content they need. But we haven't yet solved the issue of, well, what does this look like when I edit it, right? And you may have seen Vercel announce that they have a live kind of preview feature coming, but that isn't live yet. That is kind of still work in progress. We're working with them among others. But there are options for doing a live preview today, and they are actually really simple to adopt. So let me show you the next thing here. Maybe I'll flip back to my overview and say, okay, visual edit buttons, check. Again, straightforward. Find what you need, no changes to code required, or minimal changes to code required, kind of a no-brainer. The next one that's really handy is a live preview. So what I'd like to do is make edits here and see where what those look like in context as I make changes. That could be a lot more intuitive, and that can really help me out. So let me show you an example of that. I'm going to go over to this Shopaholic demo space. This is one we've demoed in the past, and show you kind of a common workflow for this, what the code looks like, and what those advantages are. And just so you know, I probably should have pointed out, these are all a spectrum. In fact, I will show this in more detail in a bit, but basically this is sort of a range of rigidity. Rigidity is good sometimes. Sometimes you want your code locked down to what can be changed and modified. And then kind of slowly transitioning to more visual, more drag and drop, more flexible, which can be good for other use cases. And again, I'll cover in detail which use cases each of these is good for, but just so we know, this is sort of a linear spectrum, and we're kind of becoming a little bit more visual, you could say, with each one. So let's pop back over here and let's make a new, actually, I'm going to edit. We have I think it's called a headless homepage, headless content, cool. So I'm going to go in and edit this page. What's really cool about this is now, instead of getting that form interface that covers the screen, the form interface is now on the side of the screen, and I actually can make edits in real time here. So as I make edits, hello world, we can see it. This is much more natural. And this is actually a good example, because imagine for a moment we did not have a visual preview, and all you had were these options like header, title, subtitle, CTA. If you were reading that and you didn't have the context on the right, it's kind of hard to know what is the difference between a header and a title. Like, yes, we like to name things well, and we try hard to name things well, but sometimes designs change, sometimes requirements change, sometimes we don't have time to document things perfectly. We like to assume we're perfect, but we're not always. So this is where it's really, really nice to just see and say, okay, the header comes before the title, and it's got less emphasis than the title. So I can put in here, maybe I want to do like, maybe I want Black Friday, and I want to say like Black Friday is coming. And then for the title, shop our Black Friday deals. By the way, I use a lot of e-commerce examples because that's actually my personal background, but nothing here is specific to e-commerce. Works great for e-commerce, but regardless, marketing sites, multi-branded content, native apps, it all applies. Now I can see what I'm doing, and I can say, okay, CTA very clearly should not be too long. A whole sentence here for the CTA would be a little strange looking. And so this gives us a lot of really good context. Another important thing we can do here too is we can test images against the background. So if I didn't have a real-time preview, I might upload this image and go, oh, hopefully I check before this goes live that that image is not visible on top of this text. And different types of structures you might use. You might include like a Boolean fields to change the text from light to dark, which you'd have to know to use based on light or dark image. Like most CMSs, you can add descriptive text throughout here to like try and explain to your content authors, oh, make sure to do this. But it doesn't mean everyone's going to always read it, always remember it, or even fully understand it. At the last company I worked at, we had huge pages of documentation explaining. We actually had screenshots of the form and the UI and what, connected to what and what to use when. There was a lot to maintain, and it was pretty tedious to do that. And it still wasn't the most intuitive, and it often got out of date because new requirements come in, you change the template, and now the docs are out of date. Go to the docs, did you forget? So now we can see this a little bit more easily and say, okay, maybe try another image. It's still not quite right. Maybe we can find some other image here. This will be much better. Look at that. That works fantastic. And what's cool here too is I'll show you a couple other pieces. So here in our example page, we've got some automatically generated products. Assume this is a website like Amazon, where below the fold for the homepage, we want to show some level of product recommendations that are automatically served based off your past shopping history. And so that comes from the code that's hard-coded intentionally, but maybe at times we want to add promotional banners. So here's how the nice part is, this is not just for editing a line of text. You can make complete structural changes. We can update banners. Here's my Hello World banner. I can add another banner and rearrange them and add as many kind of promotions as you want. So this is just structured data where we said, hey, we've got a list here. The list takes certain fields. And again, we could see it all in real time. We can see these banners are quite large. So you know what? I don't necessarily think I want 2 of these. They're quite taking up a lot of room. So let's be pretty particular about what we put in them. Upload our images, change our content, etc. Again, these are all things we don't really want to guess at. And we would like to have, this real-time visual preview of that. We can see our changes as we do them. We can see our images. We can see our text colors. Whatever you offer as a developer, this is what you get. It's a huge step up. And let me show you the code to do this is not very different. So if we go back over, and I'm going to go to the live preview code example, the only difference between having a live preview and not is you need some type of very, very simple wrapper. So in the case of Builder, we provide this Builder content component. So if we didn't need a live preview, our code would just look like this. Cool. Pull the fields, display the fields. If we want to add the live preview, we just wrap it into components. And this, I'll make one little change here. And now by default, the content that's passed down is displayed. But when you're in this preview mode, we automatically detect it. And this function as a child, this is a React code example. This works for any framework, Vue, even like plain HTML, like PHP, Ruby on Rails, etc. But anyway, as the data changes, you'll get a real-time preview of the updated data. And so this is a very thin thing to add, very, very simple to add, and kind of a no-brainer, especially for things that are inherently visual, such as a page, a home page, a landing page, promotional sections, announcement bars, like those things at the top of websites. Like we have one right now that's literally, I think, talking about come to our webinar. I guess we've transitioned it to be the next webinar, but you get the idea. These things are really, really good for that. So you can see what you're doing, not make mistakes. Make sure that you test different screen sizes as well, right? We may say like, I could take a simple example from our website really quickly. You might fill out the announcement bar in desktop and realize for mobile, maybe it's a little bit too big or too long. In this case, I don't think that's the case. I think it looks okay, but we've definitely made some before that look fine on desktop. And so it's nice to have a one-click, okay, this looks nice on all the different screen sizes. I think we're good to go. Now, one other question that just came here, which is fantastic. Is it possible to get images from a DAM, aka Digital Asset Manager, Cloudinary, Imagix, anything else? And the answer is totally, absolutely. With Builder or any other CMS, you can absolutely integrate with DAMs, and then these photo pickers would actually be replaced by your Digital Asset Manager. You would have your Cloudinary interface or whatever partner or technology you use. And so, yes, that's a common one and quite an important one. So let's continue going down the spectrum a bit. Oh, and let me show you one other thing that's quite cool as well. Remember when I showed Vercel's live preview where you could edit buttons? I do also want to show this, which is one other option you have for edit buttons is Builder actually has a Chrome extension for this. And so without having to add any code at all, like not even having to add that, checking for the environment, Builder actually has this Chrome extension you could toggle on and off, where you can just be on a page, doesn't have to be any special mode, hit the check, and now we can edit sort of any of these different regions. So now we can see here's our announcement bar, and we can go edit that. Now we see this is the page we just had open, so let's pop into that. And again, various methods of doing visual edit buttons. Again, here's one method of visual preview. I think a small handful of headless CMS support the visual preview. Builder obviously does. Visual's kind of been our thing forever. And so they all do it a little bit differently. Some are more complicated than others, and some offer different features than others. So definitely worth checking out. So let's keep going here. And let me explain this little bit. And we're going to go into visual component composition, which I think is where things start to get pretty interesting and pretty novel compared to what you might be used to. So for these first two approaches, these were all structured data, meaning, as you maybe saw in the code, you create a schema of what people can edit. So that might be created in code, or that might be created inside of a CMS UI. And you're just explicitly saying, you know, we have this page and it has a hero, which takes a text field, an image field, and a this and a that and a that. And so you completely build out the code, kind of hard coded for what you accept. And then people get a form-like interface. It could have edit buttons, it could have a visual preview, but it's still a form at the end of the day. The benefit of that is structure things as rigidly as you like. The drawback is, and I'll show you an example. So we used to do this at the company I used to work at, ShopStyle. And it did work until our marketing team would have an ever-evolving set of needs, as any good marketing team does, right? Marketing is very dependent on experimentation, testing, and learning. And if you're not running tests, if you're not trying things, you are not learning what is going to captivate your audience as much, which is going to mean you're not learning how to grow your business, to increase your conversions, all of that. Like, you want to be moving and testing and moving testing all the time. So our marketing team, like any good team, would say, hey, we need to run a new test where we have a secondary call to action here. We need to shop now, or we need, like, a very common one was we made this hero, we gave the fields, and then we said, okay, great. And marketing team would come back the next week and say, great, for this next hero, for this next week's homepage, we need two buttons, a shop men's and shop women's. Well, unfortunately, if you didn't build that into the template and hook that up to the CMS, adding a button is actually a full create a ticket, wait for an engineer to get to it, write the code, update the CMS schema, deploy the code, hope you don't roll back because your code and CMS can get out of sync if you have rollbacks for other purposes. And then, you know, in a small company, that could be a couple-week process, just, you know, get it onto the queue and then get it done and get it into the next release. Larger companies could be a very long process. At ShopStyle, this could be as much as a multi-month process, because we just didn't have engineering availability at every moment. It would go to the back of the list, and you would only get to the back of the list when you got through everything else that had some level of importance too. So whether you want to add a button, or maybe another thing that came up a lot was just rearranging or inserting, right? A promotion might dictate that, hey, maybe we need a new section for one day or 1 week that promotes a really important new sale, and we need that to live in between these sections. Or maybe we need to rearrange, maybe we need to add a fourth column or third column or second column. Maybe we need to run some personalized tests like, hey, we want our menswear shoppers to see a more menswear oriented homepage, women's wear or women's wear. If unknown, we'll show a mix of both, or what most of our traffic tends to be looking for. A common thing too that happens with ShopStyle or Everlane or other people is they want to take over a page entirely. Like, Black Friday is coming, they want this whole page to be Black Friday deals, right? Whatever used to be on the page, who cares? Black Friday should be completely customized and tailored to Black Friday shoppers. But there's a problem. The last thing you want to do is deploy code on Black Friday. You do not want to be pushing code for a new page layout and rolling it back and making changes. Generally, people are in these key moments in time, they're in some level of code freeze. Like, don't deploy code in these really key moments. So the question is, how do you solve for that? The two forums I showed you don't give us any ability to solve for that. They will show you what's happening, but they don't let you change what's happening. You can find how to edit, but you can't actually make non-trivial edits. And that's where we get into this idea of visual component composition. And this is where we kind of flip the idea on its head and say, hey, why don't we just stop hard coding all these pages? As developers, we already make components. They're like Lego blocks, so these reusable pieces. And inside of our code, we mix and match them all day. We have this hero and product and button, and we just kind of move them around visually in code. Well, what if we flip the script and we actually said, instead of fields, these like form inputs being the fundamental primitive of a CMS, what if we make components the primitive? And what if we gave certain access to the site to mix and match the components in various ways? So let me show you what this looks like in practice. I'm going to jump over to this kind of cool edge personalization space I have. I used the Next.js Commerce starter for this. So let's actually make a new page. Let's just make a new homepage, and I'll show you what this component composition looks like. Here we go. So I have this really cool site here, and I have this set up so that I have my design system components registered here. So as you can see, by default, there's nothing on this page. And I'll show you how you can do this for sections. It doesn't have to be a full page thing. By default, there's nothing hard-coded on this page. All we did is tagged which components are available. And now we can start actually dragging and dropping. And I'll admit the term visual editing has become used very broadly lately. Historically, visual editing tended to mean something like this, a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, meaning I can drag and drop and create brand new things and see them update in real time. This is where we get maximum reuse, which is the whole idea that we adopt modern frameworks like React and Vue and Quick and Svelte in the first place, is that we don't want to hard code every page of our website. Instead, we want to make these building blocks and reuse them. Each of these blocks has different options. Let me choose a different product connected to my product catalog. Let me choose a different style. I can get fancy here, and we have this nice container component, and maybe I'll place these two products inside of the container, and now they have a nice sort of constrained max width. I can go in and still make edits in real time. Hello world. And this is just a React component in the React props. In fact, I'll show you what the code looks like, but you don't actually change your code at all. You only annotate it. And this is important because this is something that virtually no CMS does. Builder's pretty unique here. And most importantly, Builder's the only one that won't require your code and your components to change. So let's go in and now, the cool part is now we can publish, we can make changes. These can be richly interactive components. They can really be anything that you want. And let me show you what the code looks like for this as well. So going back to our examples here, as you recall, the basic, most simple CMS option, let's even undo this and say, hey, this is the simplest tiny little thing for CMS is cool. So this is what your normal CMS will look like. With the one caveat that there's going to be a lot of fields here, right? If you're making a whole page connected to a CMS or large portions where you have to field by field tie things together, you're going to have a whole lot of code here describing the entire layout and all the possible fields. And your CMS will get a little complicated with all the field variations as well, especially when you need to start making edits. Like one thing we did as a temporary solution at ShopStyle in the past when using structured data for this stuff, and we didn't have component composition, is we would create lots of Boolean logic. So the schema would be full of all kinds of different checkboxes, like a switch to say, oh, show this layout, show that layout, show this version, add this section, remove this section. And so the form was huge because it was all kinds of optional sections. And anytime we need something new, we would like add it, and it would get really, really crazy. And so flipping back to our code, what this actually looks like for the component composition is, let's go here. Okay, cool. So the actual integration code just becomes this. So instead of hard coding, so if you remember before, what we had looked like this, and then hard code all the possible stuff. Instead, we're actually creating a dynamically rendered area. So we're still fetching data from the CMS. And the data now uses a tree structure. And I can show you what the data that the CMS holds looks like in a moment. But basically, it's a tree of JSON that just describes what components to put where. And this builder component knows how to dynamically render those. And I'll explain some of the other interesting properties we get out of this in a moment. But now, instead of hard coding our hero and products and stuff and making it impossible to change those, now we actually flip it, and the JSON describes what components to put where and with what props. So the JSON will be a tree that says, put your hero here with these props, like this title, this image. Put your product here and show the shirt there. Put the other product next to it and show the jacket and use the slim variant. And it's just a tree of describing what components and what props all the way down. Your code now no longer has to update every time marketing team, design team, product team needs a change. You're not actually going in and changing the code to the new layout and the new option and updating the schema and keeping them in sync, and oh, they're out of sync again and having tickets and issues and fire drills. You're actually just doing this. You're taking the components that already exist in your code. For example, let's just make a hero component. So let's say we just have this hero, and oh, cool, Copilot will give us something. Hold on. And again, this could be with anything you want. You could use Tailwind for the styling. You could use Material UI. You can reference all kinds of components, some image component, some interactive parallax title, who cares? Again, these are just your components. I'll explain a bit how this works in more detail in a minute, but just take the hero you already have, don't change anything about it, and then just call this register component function we offer, where we give it a reference to the hero, and then we tell it a name and what inputs do we allow to be edited. And this is a typical CMS schema where you can decide the order, if they're required, if certain, you can do like allowed file types, you can allow JPEG, PNG, SVG, no GIF. These can get really detailed on how you specify the editing experience, the editing constraints. Now, once you do this and register a few more components, that's where suddenly you get this full, rich visual editing experience. And I'll go into a little more detail on how this can be done. Actually, let me show you one more thing, and then I'll answer some questions. And I showed creating a page, but let's also show over here creating portions of pages. So let's actually make a new editorial section for our product page. And here you'll see this page is hard-coded. So this would look akin to if back here, this was our product page. And we had like our header and then product details and other stuff, any other logic to fetch, the specific product to show, et cetera. Again, the idea of any headless CMS is it just slots into what you have. It doesn't tell you how to build anything or how to structure anything. So if you had a product page that looked like this, you wanted to add builder, you're just going to add this component. And now that becomes a region that's editable. I'm going to call this product editorial. And in Builder, in the interface, we have good docs on this, but you would just make a new model called product editorial. That takes like 2 clicks and it's there. And that's it. And this would actually be fetching the product editorial as well. And now you have this situation where this is just a normal page on your site. And now you have this editable region. Now, if we have nothing published here, your site will just not show anything there. But now we can go in and start adding some content here. For example, we can say, this goes great with the jacket, and let's go in, let's maybe add a container here, and let's feature the jackets. And fantastic. Maybe we also want to add some text and a button. So you can choose if you allow additional elements. Builder provides some out of the box, and with roles and permissions or just configuration, you can choose, is it allowed? So maybe I'm going to go in and say, hey, let's add some text here. This goes amazing with the jackets. Maybe we want to change this. We can edit over here as well and call that an H2. Oops, I guess we don't have special H2 styling on this. So I will show in a minute the bespoke editing, which is totally up to you if you want to allow. So I'm giving you a sneak peek here. And maybe we'll add our button here too, which says links to the jacket and says shop the jacket now. You could see the button automatically applied certain styling because, again, it's just a component in my code base. And I might do one more thing, which is to vertically center these. And now this looks quite nice, and it looks great on all devices, which is quite important. I'll show you in a minute how you can make tweaks per device, just using normal CSS, but you get the idea. I think this is pretty nice, and I think we did a pretty decent job. So let me answer a couple questions. First one is, how does it handle version control? And is it possible to roll back changes or keep different versions of this content to easily switch the content? Yes, absolutely. So this works probably like other CMSs you're used to. You can make unlimited entries here. We have a versions tab to show you all the different versions. I only have 2. And you could publish and roll back and rearrange them anytime that you want. And so basically this works a lot like Git branching, though it happens over an API. So you might make a home page. And then in Builder, you'll duplicate it and make edits. You might then publish that, and that's now the live version, but you can later unpublish it to roll back to the previous one. This also allows really powerful personalization and A/B testing, where you can actually have multiple versions live at once, but targeted at different audiences. So we can actually, and again, this is a lot like Git branching, where you have multiple branches in parallel, where you can make changes and publish and roll back. I should mention also, you can roll back within an entry as well. Just go to the History tab, roll back to previous points in time. So we can go back to as I was making edits, you can revert and publish back to those points in time. So besides the totally visual history that you get here, and the ability to create separate entries and roll forward and roll back those, you have really powerful options. But that's where, in terms of personalization, you can have multiple options live as well by saying, actually, hey, let's take this nice version we made and let's only target it at those who have a specific audience. Maybe this comes from our CDP, and we've tagged them as we think they would be a good candidate for the jacket. Or maybe they're a power shopper, or maybe they previously looked at things, or maybe they're of a certain locale. I can cover localization separately. That's a whole separate feature set, maybe a specific device. And this is where you can have multiple versions running and look at the analytics of them separately, which I'll cover a bit more on that in a minute. let's actually not forget to swing back to that. So one thing that does tend to happen, and maybe I can show something cool here in a moment. Trying to think of the best analytics demo to show. I'll show you a basic example, because one thing that tends to happen in a situation like this is, now we've made these components. And let me actually mark this question as answered. If you have any follow-up questions, please do ask though. You might imagine like, okay, we've made these compositions of components. The first thing that our team is going to ask, especially those, working on marketing, is, well, who's clicking on what? We've got the cell, which is clickable. We've got this button, which is clickable. We've got other areas that aren't clickable at all, but actually you can see who's clicking on them anyway, which might indicate a CTA might belong there, even though it doesn't exist. And that's where we do two things. So we will provide analytics out of the box. This is just built in. And this will show you, there's no obviously information here yet because this is not live on the website. I could flip to something that's been live for a little bit more time to show you real live analytics. But here we can show you impressions, conversions, click-through rate, unique clicks, all that good stuff. Show the traffic by device over time, conversions over time, etc. But the heat map is a cool thing. And let me go back to that. And maybe I can show a page. Let's see if I've had any of these long enough to actually generate some analytics. This is a demo site, so it probably has little to nothing. But let's see if we can get something out of here. Okay, so we get little bits of traffic. That's nice. We don't have conversion tracking hooked up. That's actually just one line of code, but this isn't a real store, so there isn't actually a real conversion to put here. Yeah, and so here's our heat map mode, and this is kind of cool. What this will show is where people are interacting. I can hover over each of the components, whether they're buttons or links, etc., and I can see how many people are clicking, how many people even saw this, and how many conversions is this generating. And the beautiful part is, traditionally, heat map software like this comes at a major performance cost, but because of how Builder actually understands via JSON the structure of your page, unlike a typical heat map tool that actually has to capture your page and send it over the network to be stored, we don't have to do any of that. We just track a click happens. So we can do this without a performance cost and revisualize all this stuff in a really cool way. There's a whole blog post on that if you're interested, but this allows you to not have to rig up all kinds of custom analytics. This was clicked, this was clicked. You can have it here. All of this can also be sent to another analytics system or synced with one in the other direction as well. Okay, next question. This is a really good one. Can you mix this approach, the drag and drop editor, with the first approach of structured content in a single page? Yes, and this is actually super important because generally speaking, let's give a couple brief use cases of mixing and matching these two approaches. One simple example is, let's say we have a homepage. You pretty much never want to just have drag and drop content. It's actually really rare. You actually also probably want a few structured fields. For example, in Next.js, we can add this head component to change our head tags. And this is where we generally want to have like a title. And this is where you will grab additional structured fields that you add to the visual content. So in this case, we want to grab this title structured field. And maybe we have a meta name equals description. Oh my goodness, I don't remember the exact format of the description meta tag. I think it's like content equals yada yada, but you get the idea. This is where you can have all kinds of things, but it's not just limited to that. There we go, content. Yay, autopilot, Copilot knows how to code better than me. And this could be for a lot more stuff. And so I'll show you a blogging example in a minute, but blogging, you actually would often want to put the blog title here. So we might want to have like a title components. And that's where we're going to have the blog title be displayed, which also may end up being the SEO title, or maybe it'll be, we'll have an SEO title, like this, and then we'll put the blog title there. And then maybe we'll have like the blog author. I'll show you this example in a minute. Author, and this could be a relational data field. And there you go. And I'll show you what this interface looks like in a moment, but basically, yeah, you're mixing structured data with drag and drop data. We can say dragging and dropping happens here, and the editable region happens there. And so let me show you what this looks like, because this is a very good question. I actually have a blog post that I'm writing right now on this topic right here in Builder. I actually usually draft them in Notion and collaborate there. I export them as Markdown, then I import. We have a Markdown import feature and import them here. And now I'm making changes. And here's the important thing to see is I have this drag and drop editable region. In fact, I can delete everything. And now you'll see I have this add block. So that's where everything that I drag and drop goes. And I'm just going to add all my stuff back because I don't want to have to redo it. But all the fields up here are structured data. So this is like what you saw before. We get a visual preview of this. Hello world, here's my title. This is where I can see, like, is my blog post name too long? Let's look at it on mobile. Okay, it's getting long, but I think it's good. This is where I found that, like, we have a topic field, and I was like, CMS looks a little weird there. Maybe content management looks better. So again, this is a mixture, and this is kind of the point I want to drive home and here is, usually you don't want to do one or the other thing. A good, well-managed website, in our opinion, in our experience, uses several different of these techniques in one, sometimes in one page, one entry, like you see here. And the nice part about being them combined into one is that they publish together. So when I publish this, we get all that visually composed content and the structured content together to generate one whole page. But you might also notice here too, like author. This author is a relational field. This is a field coming from, it's a reference to our authors collection. I could open up our blog authors. In fact, I think if I go Steve here, we'll be able to, oh, actually, I make a lot of Steve testing pages. I'll just show you how you do this. So the authors are over here, and we can go to blog author, and I think Steve is the second oldest one. And so, yeah, this is referencing, oops, sorry, I probably jacked up my environment here, but this is referencing a different content entry that is managed separately. So when the author name changes, oh, I see what happened. Sorry, I've been switching spaces too much and confusing our editor. Let's go back to builder space. And so anyway, when I go to edit the blog author, and let's go back to Steve or Brent, whatever. Anytime you edit Brent Locks, it will show up everywhere. So if I went in and edited Steve, wherever Steve went, actually, I think I have to, forgive me, I'm bouncing all over our product here. Back to builder space here, and back to our blog article. Anyway, if any time I change the link for Steve or the name for Steve, it'll automatically update here. There's a few more things I want to show around the mixing and matching, but anyway, let me mark that as answered, and let's see. Yes. Reading through the questions real quick to see which I want to prioritize. So one question, this is actually quite a simple one. It was in the analytics screen. Is the mouse icon hovers and the finger points on the button click, or is the finger pointing on the button a click, or is the mouse icon desktop clicks and the finger pointing on the button mobile clicks? I believe the difference is actually clicks versus conversion. So let's just open up one of our blog posts here. We did this quick reaches v1 blog post. Let's go over to the insights, and I'll be able to answer the question and show you what I mean. So this one got a big all spurt when we first launched it, which is pretty cool. Let's go to the heat map. Let's see where people are interacting. You can see some really interesting insights from the heat maps. You'll often find people clicking things that are not clickable, and that actually indicates an interesting level of interest that they might have. We can see which links people are clicking. But yeah, so the finger touching the button is actually conversions. And so we probably should use a better icon. I actually chose that icon. Now I'm questioning it because that feedback's good, that it looks like a click versus a touch. But yeah, in this case, this is, so this one section got 5,000 clicks and 1,000 conversions. Conversions in our sense means people who just signed up for our product. For e-commerce, that would mean people who are purchased. So we can see click-through rate and conversion rate, but the dollar amounts, we don't have a dollar amount tied to conversions because we have a free tier of a product that you sign up for first. If you're e-commerce, the conversions would track a dollar value, and you would actually see like, oh, hey, look, this product generated $10,000, but this product generated 100,000. And that's cool because you'll see them side by side and start running tests and making changes accordingly. So hopefully that helps. One other one. Oh, this is a good one from Bree. Is Builder still a headless CMS? It seems like a build your own head CMS because you can build the interface, or do I misunderstand? So this is a good question. There was a point in time where we didn't call ourselves a headless CMS because a headless CMS tends to mean a very specific thing, which is structured data editing. This whole drag and drop with your components and full no-code editing, which I'll show in a minute, doesn't exist in other CMSs. So the question was, are we still a headless CMS? After a lot of deliberation on this, we've decided yes, because fundamentally a headless CMS to people, from what we find, means one is just CMS over an API, which was what we still are. You can hook that up to anything, your React site, your Vue site, your native Swift app, your React Native app, your whatever, your Apple Watch. Two, it is you control the head completely. So yes, we provide SDKs to make it easy. You could write your own custom renderer, etc. But we are still not a monolithic headless CMS. A non-headless CMS would not be something you can just change front-end technologies or connect to other front-end technologies. Like, yes, WordPress added APIs, but it's still kind of not the same thing. So we call ourselves a headless CMS. Specifically, we call ourselves a visual headless CMS to kind of specify this visual element is quite a unique aspect here, and something we're seeing, incrementally other CMSs adopting in various forms, often those more rigid forms, because those are more related to how they've done things to date. Builder actually kind of has been tackling these things from both ends from the start. That's kind of been our thing. But no, I don't think you misunderstand. And I think maybe you need a different name one day. But for now, I think headless CMS is still the right way to think about it, just with this spectrum of visual editing and kind of the complete set of options. One other question that I want to show the complete no-code editing is from David. Says, you mentioned marketing campaign experimentation and segmentation, as well as A/B testing. Where might you define a boundary between where to use the built-in A/B testing capabilities versus integrating with other experimentation and segmentation solutions? This is a really good question. And this actually applies to analytics as well, which is what you want to do is think about Builder as the experimentation solution for your content. So for example, in Builder, let me show you something. I'm going to make a new Builder space. And in Builder, this whole interface here, this is made in Builder. So if I hit this edit button, we can see, hey, look at that. We've got this content made in Builder. This is like our onboarding content. And then we've got this section, which is a symbol in Builder. This means a shared reference where we actually use this exact thing in multiple places. And we can edit it in one place and distribute it in one click. It's updated. Like we have these visuals in our docs, and so they just update automatically. What's cool about this, and what's important to point out, is this is where we do A/B testing of this exact content. How much did changes or personalizations to this make it easier for people to onboard and adopt the product? That still doesn't mean we don't use Launch Darkly for feature flags within the product. Like different features, we use Launch Darkly for. Could you use Builder for that? Actually, yeah. But Builder is really built for content. It is a CMS. And so we've seen people use it as a feature flagging solution, but I would say the obvious solution to use it for is for content experimentation, content personalization, content analytics, content tests. So will Builder replace Google Analytics? No. Builder is really for this content entry did better than that one. This A/B test boost conversions compared to this, the stuff made inside Builder. Will Google Analytics tell you the same answers Builder can? No. So Google Analytics will tell you your homepage got X many conversions. It can't tell you that you ran 5 different A/B tests with Builder and this subject variation generated better results than this one. So I would say use them together. An A/B testing solution or a feature flagging solution that works product-wide is good for doing that. Feature flags or A/B testing existing solutions for regions of content can be very limited. You can't just drag and drop to make net new things with another A/B testing system out there, especially with good performance like you can Builder. So run those content tests in Builder, personalizations, analytics, and continue to use your other systems for other needs kind of across the application. With the caveat that if you're a smaller business, Builder might be able to service all those needs for you, and you might not need to make it more complicated. But for like an enterprise business, I would suggest continuing to use the right tool for the job, so to speak. Okay, let me flag this. And now I want to talk about the last variation here. And let's go into visual, what I call visual no code. And let me explain what it is, how to use it, where you might want to use it, and how you can customize it with roles and permissions. And so let's go back to that previous example. And like always, I need to let my dog out midstream. Anyway, my little chihuahua named Max likes to visit during stream sometimes. Anyway, so let's go back to this page that we were making, and let's say we've got an issue. Our issue is this hero is beautiful, but we got 2 big problems with this hero. Thanks, Bree. Next time I promise I'll show the dog. The dog always makes a mystery appearance. Next time it's a funny looking dog, so that'll be entertaining. Anyway, so let's say we've got 2 issues with this hero. Issue 1 is there's no button on this thing. We made the hero, it's beautiful, but this is an e-commerce site. Why do you have a hero without a call to action, right? And this just came out of the box of the Vercel Commerce Kit, and it was a nice looking thing. And I didn't even realize this at first until it dawned on me, that's kind of an important thing we left off. And that happens. You make a design system, you start using it. And when you start using it, you go, oops, we didn't predict every possible use case because we're human. We're not infinitely knowledgeable. And so let's take a second issue, which is it's not very visually appealing. It's just black and white. Like, this is an e-commerce page. We want to show lifestyle imagery. We want to show something that makes people want to buy a product. This is not very compelling to buy a product. So that's where we can go into no code mode. This is something you can control with both schemas and roles and permissions, meaning you might decide that no code editing is only allowed by certain users in your organization, like your marketing or product design team. So you have to be a designer to use the full design mode. Or second, it's only allowed in certain areas. So you might say our homepage has to be strictly on brand. But this promotional region of a collection page that's clearly promoting new things and always needs to change, we don't want to deploy code every time and have tickets every time. Maybe we can allow no code for a certain subset of users like our designers. Or another common example is landing pages. It's very, oh yeah, localization, cool. Sorry, got a question about localization. I could show a couple things, and we have a whole separate webinar stream on that, so that could be worth its own whole deep dive too. But anyway, landing pages is a common one. We've worked with so many companies across, marketing sites, e-commerce, etc., where Everlane drops a new product line, and they want to have a stunning bespoke page for that. They want a page on their website that they'll link to from ads, social, and email that looks like no other page on their site. It's beautiful, it's rich, it's animated, it's dynamic, and it breaks the boundaries of the design system. It uses the same design primitives, the same fonts, colors, etc., but it doesn't have to. It's not trying to look like every other page on your website. And so let's take this as an example now. We need to make something more exciting and visually appealing here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this hero, and I'm going to recreate it from scratch. I don't need any components for this as long as I have permissions. So I'm going to start with our image block. I'm going to add it here up at the top. Right now, this is inside of that container, and I'm like, I want it outside the container. Now I'll go in and, oops, I got zoom widgets all over my screen, but I'll go in and I will drag this up. I think that's the right amounts of size. I'll tweak this again later. And so, cool. Let's add an image here. I think I like, this one's kind of nice. I actually had AI generate this image, which is kind of cool. Or actually, I think I might add the image in a second. I'll show you why. So now let's add some text. So I'm just gonna drop some text in. And now is where I can start styling it. So I touch this in a minute. Now, when you're allowing just component composition, you probably wouldn't allow any custom styling. This Figma looking design mode is only meant to be used when and where you want. You don't have to use it at all. You can use pure data for everything. That's totally fine. But now let's go in here and let's make this a darker font. These are our brand colors that you can customize and lock down to, like as a design system. We can boost the fonts, which you can also lock. Let's go in here and say, hey, shop our latest collection. Maybe I'll add our button. So what's cool here is, again, we're mix and matching. You can use the no-code mode without any components. Like that's what ShopStyle originally did, and I think still does. This page you see is made from scratch in Builder. Nobody wrote any components. And the integration for that is trivial because all you do, and I'll show some code really quickly, apologies for bouncing around. All you do is this. You literally just say, this region is visually editable. Make it with no code. And you may or may not be surprised, you can make incredible stuff with no code these days. If you check out the latest offerings by Wix and Webflow and others, that is actually one of the big motivators of Builder to exist, because we were hard coding all these pages, and this marketing team never had the components and resources that they needed. And eventually they went and they used Webflow to make a page that they wanted, a new version of the homepage they've been asking for forever, and engineering never had time. They brought it to me, I was the engineering manager, and said, hey, can we just take this page we made, like we did the work, can we just put it on this Angular website? We used Angular, now a lot of people use React, like whatever. And we had explained that's not how these work. There historically has never been a no-code solution, a full WYSIWYG, create things from scratch without any code, with full, beautiful detail, however you want, that can just connect to a code base over an API. There's no such thing as headless no code or headless CMS that's no code. And that was a huge motivator for building this product, because I remember thinking, our backlogs would be so much smaller if the marketing team could just use a product like Webflow or Wix, but connected to our site. And by connected, I mean it needs to be over an API, it needs to be performant, it needs to allow our components. We need to drop in our button, see that nice hover effect? We want that to be consistent across the entire website. It needs to use our analytics. It needs to use our deployment. Like really, it has to come over an API and stick to everything we already do. Our analytics, because the analytics across the page will apply here. No iframes or hacks. SEO needs to be there. Everything, ADA, etc., or accessibility, I mean. And so anyway, that's where it was kind of obvious, like, well, what if we could just offer that? And what would be the trade-offs of that? And with the simple integration, and again, components are totally optional. You can add components and mix and match, which I'll show. Forgive me for jumping around. One of these. Okay, cool. So again, here we can go full no code and create what we need. We don't need tickets and deployments because a lot of times at ShopStyle, a hero would run for 1 week and we deploy code and roll it back after the week. It was crazy, but that's what marketing is sometimes. That's intentional. That's actually how you boost conversions, is you try new things. You don't want your website to look the same every day. You want people to come back to it and see a fresh look, a different thing, a new set of products, something that actually stands out. And that's what we find across our customers. So now we're going to add in our button. This is the button from our design system. You'll see we have a warning here because it has a required input, the link that we have to fill out. So, okay, let's do that. Let's say shop men's, and let's add another button, and it's going to be shop women's. We are going to make these, let's see, I want these to be side by side. So we're just going to do this to better center it. Maybe I'll align it a little bit differently as well. Or maybe I will get fancy and do some cool stuff where I go in here and I vertically center. And now let's choose our image that looks good for this. Sure, that shirt was okay. Image is okay. Let's maybe see if we have anything else more exciting. Maybe the backpack. This is not too bad. But you can use AI to generate images. That's kind of fun, but whatever. And I don't want this extra padding. Cool. So now we've made something brand new and it's completely optimized for mobile. Everything kind of responds. And I can even go in here and make tweaks. And so maybe I like that font size for mobile, this font size for desktop. Fantastic. We did not have to deploy new code, create tickets, have workflows for any of this stuff. And what's awesome is we click publish and it's now live. And it used a mix of our components, right? We can also include things like product cells. Like we can add dynamic interactive components inside the hero. Maybe let's make this smaller and fit more compactly. Maybe we'll make it 200 pixels wide. This is where things get exciting. And I'll show you maybe an example or two here. Everlane does this kind of mix and match mode, which really combines everything into one. Like I showed, you can have structured fields with a live preview for like the page title and other meta information. Should it have a header, what type of header, etc. You can have full bespoke editing to create stuff you see here. And you can drop in your components as needed. For instance, they have these cool kind of sliding carousels, which come from the React component system, which is identical to other parts of the website. Or they have this interactive like shop recent Instagram posts. When you combine all these techniques into one, you could do amazing stuff and reduce your engineering tickets, boost your workflows, boost your conversions by moving faster, make really more amazing things, all kinds of crazy stuff you'll see here. And all of it you can just pop in and edit with the builder edit buttons. Now again, and you can adopt this stuff incrementally. Like I showed you, Vercel offers an edit button solution now and a real-time kind of editing preview. I think it sounds like it's coming. Builder offers a full spectrum. We have a lot of experience in all this. And some other CMSs offer bits and pieces of this. You won't find others with the drag and drop, but you will find some types of visual preview, etc. Let's see. Here's one question from Anthony. I have no knowledge of coding or CSS or anything technical, and I'm the sole creator of Builder content at my company. As a person that creates the sections pages on Builder for our sites, can you suggest what else I should learn in order to use Builder to its fullest potential? That's a great question. So we have a lot of documentation and we have a few different sort of courses, like longer videos that walk you through really in depth all the nuances you can learn with the visual editor. If you want to go deeper, at the end of the day, Builder is a thin layer on top of HTML and CSS intentionally, because our rule of thumb is what Builder produces through that dynamic system you saw should be literally identical as possible to what a developer would have written by hand in code. It should look as good. It should perform as good. It should be as SEO optimized, as accessible, etc. And so if you're really feeling intense and you want to go deeper, we allow kind of you to get, if you have the proper roles and permissions, you can get right into the CSS properties and go nuts with crazy stuff, filters and stuff. So that would be the advanced area I would go. Otherwise, check out all the tutorials and courses we have on the doc site. And that's a really good way to learn a lot of really powerful stuff purely in the UIs without any kind of specialized crazy knowledge. Let's see. I want to cover just a couple of last things. We're a little bit over time or our expected end time, but please throw any last minute questions and I'll try and get through them and maybe show one last little thing here in a moment. Yes. So one great question, can you create new pages to new URLs? Yes. Let me show you what the code looks like and then what the UI looks like. This is a super common use case. So let's say, for example, here, we're not just, this is a builder integration example. Let's say we're not just doing our homepage, we're just doing any page. So that's where we can provide this URL parameter, URL /, and that's where you would make this a dynamic route. So in Next.js, that means you name it like page.jsx. Also in Next.js, the way that you get the exact URL in get static props is admittedly a little bit complicated. We have it in our integration docs. Let me show you what it looks like, and I'll steal the code. But in order to integrate the landing page building, we also just added integration instructions for the app router. But here we go. Params and params, So anyway, you provide the URL, whatever it is, about us, etc. The way you do that dynamically in Next.js with get static props is this. There's a slightly different way to do it with the app router. So there we go. Now we're querying Builder for a given page, and we're rendering that page. And in our integration docs, you'll also see that there's logic to show 404 as a fallback, so you can say the page doesn't exist. And that's it. And now when you integrate that, and you go over to Builder, then when we go to create new pages, it'll ask us for a URL. So we'll make our about page. It says, what should the URL be? And there we go. We have it integrated to make infinite many pages. In Next.js, you choose the layout and all of that. And again, whatever framework you use, it just define a dynamic route, query by sending us the URL, and then display the correct page. Let's see. So let me mark that as answered. E-commerce quick website. Another good question, is there a trial version where we can use our e-commerce quick website? Yes, totally. Builder is a pretty generous free tier, in my opinion. And a 30-day trial to use all the advanced features. It works fantastic with e-commerce and fantastic with a quick framework. So yes, I would recommend trying it out. And I think we're running out of time to go deep on localization. I think we have a whole other webinar and we have elaborate docs on localization, where you can do anything from, I actually don't have localization integrated in this case, but integration is very simple. And then you can actually start translating everything either at the page level. So we can actually make a completely different variation of this page where we use our targeting system to target different locales. Or you can make edits inline at the fields level. So let's actually go back in here and let's add some text. And here's where we can actually choose to, maybe I'll go over here and, oh yes, sorry, I don't have localization integrated, but I can do it this way. And here's where we can make different localized variations, type in different text per locale, or you can integrate with a localization provider. So an automated workflow, editing content in Builder, shoots to your localization provider, and then the new localized content automatically shows up on your live website as soon as it's ready or needs to get approved and published. And so that's a quick sense, but yes, I would recommend checking out the webinar. I think we could follow up with an email with the recording. And yes, localization will work with Quick and will work with Quick Speak. Yes. And yeah, we'll follow up with a recording, getting questions about the localization recording, and check out our docs. Our docs go into great detail. I mean, literally just Google search localization, or you can search on our docs and blam. We've got a whole section in the docs showing the different ways how to hook it up and some great integrations we have as well, which I think you'll all find super duper handy. One last thing I want to cover before I dart is when should you use which of these different things? And also, how can you play with this without even actually setting up an integration? So really quickly, let me cover just to round things off. When would you do each of these things? So structured data, and remember, scrolling back really quickly, when I showed visual edit buttons and visual live preview, that's for structured data. Any headless CMS supports structured data. Some support the edit buttons, some support the live preview. Builder supports all that stuff because, you know, visuals are a thing. Structured data is great for things like blog authors, navigation links. By navigation links, I mean, you've got this mega menu and you want to configure, you know, what are the URLs, what are the sub URLs, all the things in here. You don't necessarily want to drag and drop to make this super rich dynamic mega menus. Instead, you just want structured data. You want to say, hey, this link has these sublinks, here's the name, the URL, and that's really good for live preview. So on the left, you can add the links. And on the right, you can see them all preview in real time to make sure you got what you want across the different devices. So navigation links, product information. This is another good one too. I can even show you, we have something really cool called blueprints, where we actually show you examples of each of these things. So here, structured data is in red, and we'll show you a brief description of how to set up the content model, how to integrate the code, and why you would use different things. So here's the two we use for data: navigation links, product details. We'll show you again. Product details are usually pretty rigid. It's how to render the product. It should have an image, a description, a price potentially. You might connect to your PIM or e-commerce platform. But again, things that should be structured data aren't inherently super visual, make sense with structured data, and often make sense with a live preview and an edit button. For component composition, drag and drop with just your components, no external additional custom styling. That's great for any type of design system work. It's great for your homepage that you want always consistent on brand, product editorial pages, collection pages, parts and regions of your website where you want rigid design system, a lot of structure to it, but you want the flexibility so people can mix and match and reuse pieces without constant updates to code, deployments, etc. Then for no code editing, that's where you often want it for like landing pages. A net new page made by marketing for a link from their email campaign, their ad campaign, their social campaign. It's good to break out of the boundaries and allow flexibility, especially when it comes to personalizing and testing. You're going to want to be able to make significant changes, not just be stuck to, line item field edits. Promotional sections is a big one too. Maybe I can find a brief one on Everlane here where it's kind of funny, they call them Easter eggs. They will have sections throughout. Let's maybe actually go women's wear, maybe bestsellers. I'm actually thinking denim feels like a good one. There we go. So here's an example of a promotional section. This is a totally bespoke section where their team can edit those contents and build and target it at different pages. Different audiences and different collection pages see a special promotional region. On Black Friday, this might just be a big black box that says Black Friday shop our deals. On any other day, it might recommend some of the high-level categories of their denim. And again, they're doing all this stuff without editing code or deploying new changes. They're running it as a split test, 50% of traffic, whatever, personalized to just a subset of return users or logged-in shoppers, whereas brand new shoppers might see different stuff like that. And the last one I put for this is the announcement bars. Announcement bars like this up here, they do something cool where they have a custom component that they fill out visually. So it has this nice animation and transition, is also a really kind of neat use case for this. And one last thing I want to show before I leave you all and say thank you very much is if you want to try this out, there's a few paths. Path one, calendar is a good question. Actually, I'll get back to that one in a second, but path one to try it out is just go create a free account for Builder, www.builder.io. Go to app, or I think if you're not logged in like I am, it'll say sign up. Sign up is a free account. It'll walk you through integration. It'll walk you through user components in the visual editor, various different starters. It's a good way to get your hands on immediately. If you want to consult with our team, who has a ton of expertise on which visual editing option makes sense for you, for your team, based on individual team members, like roles and permissions, who should do what, or how to structure your site, what part of your site should use visual editing versus component composition versus a live preview versus edit buttons versus full-on no code, they can walk you through that, and experts on our team can help you out. The last one that's kind of cool is I just made this thing called the Builder Playground. What this is a way to have code and the visual editor side by side without actually needing to integrate locally. So if you go to playground.builder.io, you'll be able to see an example integration. I added kind of a kitchen sink here of a lot of different stuff. We've got like a component here, and we've got like different sort of like rendering strategies and stuff like that, and registering. But then when maybe I broke something in my incognito, let's open this up. I think I also have it open over, one second, here. Okay, cool. So it takes a minute to boot up. It actually runs Node.js in your browser using something called a web container. And now that's where we can actually have all of this. So I can drop in this hero component, and I can fill in the props, hello world. And the code for that component is right here. So I can change it. I can just delete the subtitle. And it's fun to be able to edit the code and the sort of no code in real time here. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Sorry, I'm breaking this because I'm opening it across tabs, and web containers are not supposed to be open across tabs. Let me make sure I don't have another one open, and then I can walk you through kind of how this works, which I think is quite cool. Maybe I can also briefly answer a question here. Actually, let's see. Drop that in, and then let's edit the hero, and let's see if I haven't. Yeah, okay, there we go. So let me explain again, forgive me, what I'm doing here is I'm adding, there we go. Hello world. So here's my hero. This is all the code for it. So we can add or delete things. Maybe show the subtitle twice and I could fill in the props. Hello. And this is what integrating builder actually is. You have your code base in the live preview and you can drop your components in. So whatever components you build, however you have them styled, I can go delete all these styles or whatever. I can be developing live here, these components, and testing out different combinations of props. So I can have this cool visual development environment where I'm putting things together and you can see how it's used in the visual editor and you can see how you edit the code. And again, this is if you install this to your local site and connect builder to your local site, that's what developing looks like. Take the hero you already have, register it with builder by defining its inputs, test it out in the visual editor and make changes however you want and go. And again, you probably saw it already, but add your components, add the rendering component and add the fetching and you're basically done. You can also add these cool custom insert menus where you group your components into nice sections. Okay, let me answer any last minute questions and then we can all wrap up our webinar here. So let's see. Yeah, so I think a couple things. Can these blocks be calendar based? So yeah, if you mean like, can you render a calendar in the block? Totally. Or if you mean like, can we use a calendar to schedule content? Totally. A content calendar is a pretty important thing. So Builder has scheduling built in, and this is where you can actually add and arrange and calendar out your content. What will go live at different times using the calendar feature, which is pretty cool. Let's see. I think we answered the majority of these. So why don't I kind of wrap things up and say the important but obligatory thank you for joining. We went a little bit over time because I just wanted to ramble through some other fun stuff that I think is exciting. I appreciate all the fantastic questions and all the great engagement from everybody here. I think this is a really cool topic. I'd be more than happy to follow up. I'm going to post a blog post on this soon. I think hopefully tomorrow, waiting on just one thing from a partner. Any questions, you can tweet at me. I'm Steve8708 on Twitter. I know that's a really weird Twitter handle, but it's available everywhere. When Blue Sky opened up, Steve8708 was there too, so I continue to use it. And in a couple weeks, I think 2 weeks from today, we're going to do a webinar on composable commerce. And so if you want to see some more advanced use cases, in fact, everybody asking about localization, if I recall correctly, that's a key thing we're showing. So we're taking these basic concepts that I showed of like, cool, drag and drop, and we're going to actually show a much more robust use case where we're connecting to much more third parties. I think we might have a digital asset manager in there as well, different e-commerce backends, and we're going to compose an entire system and show how these visual editing capabilities actually work phenomenally for complex use cases, for enterprises that need to manage multiple brands in one place, for composable commerce where you have all kinds of things to connect, but you want to visually drag and drop with your Shopify products and your Cloudinary images and your segment personalization and all that stuff. So, and your SmartLink localization, like how it all comes together and scales is pretty amazing. And we've kind of discovered this by happenstance, how well it works. So join for that. That'll be really fun. I think it'll be in 2 weeks. We'll include a link for that in the follow-up, I believe. And otherwise, thank you so much, everybody. I had a lot of fun with this, and I will catch you, I hope, next time.